This figure caught me off guard. I thought I was perfectly happy with the original Star Wars The Black Series Beskar version and had no plans of ever buying another Mando. But then I saw this review by fellow YouTuber Unparalleled Universe and realized that my definitive Mando was obsolete. So I immediately placed an order for the new Book of Boba Fett wave Glavis Ringworld Mandalorian. And if the thought, what in a galaxy far, far away is Glavis Ringworld, came into your head, here's a quick explanation. It's a space station that the Mandalorian visits in the Book of Boba Fett to seek counsel from the Armorer about the Darksaber. It's also the scene where Mando gets challenged for the legendary Mandalorian blade. More on that scene later. Anyway, let's take a look at the new Mando figure. Here he is next to my old Black Series Beskar Mando that I have a custom Daredevil 19 cape on. Right away, two things are obvious to me. One, the new Mando's Beskar shine is absolutely stunning. Two, there is a distinct improvement on the helmet of this Mandalorian. Wade over at Unparalleled Universe made a great point about the helmet size on the new Mandalorian. It actually looks like you could fit a 6-inch scaled head inside this figure, whereas this helmet on the older figure looks a little bit too small for that to be possible. This new Mando legitimately looks like it was taken right off the screen and put down on the table in front of me, and that's not an easy thing to do. He comes with the same blaster that the old Mando came with, and two new-to-me accessories in this Darksaber and Vibro Blade, which tucks right into his boot. I love that, by the way. It's great to have a place to house all the accessories on your figures. Another cool thing on this figure is the soft goods cape, which is a stretchy material. The Beskar Mando came with a hard plastic cape that I immediately replaced with a custom wired cape, which of course cost me extra money. I think the only thing that would make this cape better is if it was a wired cape, but hey, it's a lot better than the plastic cape that we got on this guy, so I'll take it. Articulation wise, I think this figure does everything that you need a heavily armored character to do. His knees do look a bit odd when they're bent, they're not double jointed, but I do think articulation wise, there's enough here if you're a fan of Din Jarin that you can enjoy this figure. I also love that this Mando figure can hit some of the body postures and body language that Pedro Pascal shows us when he's in the armor on the TV show. Pedro has what I think are very distinct ways of standing in the armor that my old Mando could never quite achieve. This new one though does all those subtle body language cues justice. So if it wasn't obvious by now, the Glavis Ringworld Mando has officially replaced the Beskar version of the character as the definitive Mando in my collection. You know what? This figure's so good that I need to make a diorama for it. And since this is Glavis Ringworld Mando, we're going to recreate the bridge from the scene of the battle for the Darksaber. I wanted to make something that would appear metallic and have the opportunity to be used as a single display piece or be expanded section by section to a larger bridge. So I decided to make this a fully 3D printed piece. This system uses these hexagon plugs to connect the bridge platform pieces together so I can easily extend or retract the size of the diorama. Before processing and painting this piece, I made sure everything fit together the way I wanted it to. These prints came out pretty clean, but just to be sure I would get the finish I wanted, I trimmed off some imperfections and sanded them all down. I used a nail file that had a 100 grit side and a 180 grit side, starting with the 100 grit side and then switching over to the 180 grit to make sure that I got some smooth finishes on my parts. Then I glued the pieces I wanted to be permanently attached to each other together, using a combination of Hot Wire Foam Factory Styro Glue and also some clear Gorilla Glue to make sure that I got the best possible hold on these pieces. I also used clamps for good measure. Once the glue set, I took them outside and primed them with this auto filler primer. Quick safety tip on this stuff, it is potent and I always do this outside if I can. I wear a fume mask, I wear gloves, and I just make sure that I'm not going to put myself in harm's way when I'm using any of these materials. I only did one coat of this stuff, but I did make sure that I got full coverage of these on both the tops and even the bottoms of my pieces because I want this to be a complete paint job. Speaking of paint, these are the two colors that I decided to use for this piece. painting the pieces separate colors before gluing them together to ensure a clean paint job. Once the paint dried, I started to assemble these metallic plates to the front and back of my bridge platforms using clear Gorilla Glue and a scrap piece of foam. I had to take extra care when doing this and make sure I was precise in how I lined up the plates with the platform pieces. If they were misaligned at all, the bridge pieces wouldn't fit together properly, which would defeat the purpose of the entire design. So I decided to use some clamps to ensure everything was locked into place as the glue dried. I also let the glue dry longer than I normally would because I really wanted to make sure that these held on tightly. Here's my Glavis Ringworld bridge, all printed, painted, and ready for action figure greatness. And now it's time for Mando to defend his right to wield the Darksaber. As you can see, this new Book of Boba Fett Glavis Ringworld Mando is truly something special. This is probably best in terms of value and quality. This figure retails for about $24.99, which is a lot less than the import versions of the character, and he does everything that I need my Mandalorian action figure to do. Let me know in the comments what you think of this Mandalorian action figure and what you thought of my custom diorama build. Thanks for watching this video. If you'd like to see more Star Wars diorama related content, check this out. Hey there, me again. I have one more thing that I forgot to tell you. If you own a 3D printer, you can print these files at home, and I make them available in a couple of ways. So the first is that you can go to my website, vascotoys.com, where I offer the STL files in a package for a single price. So you could pay one price and get all of the files that you would need to build this sci-fi bridge. The second is that I have a new Patreon account, and on that Patreon account, for a subscription fee, you can get access to things like full diorama builds and also some diorama components. So every week I've been uploading some different 1/12 scale props that you could scale up or scale down depending on what scale you're working in. And those are usually things like doors, windows, handles, light fixtures, and other things that would make up components for a diorama build. So please feel free to check that out to see what kinds of things you could be getting there. And also, it's not just about 3D printing on my Patreon. There's a lot of behind the scenes things and other tiers that are not 3D printing based that you might be interested in.
Vasco Toys. Action figure dioramas and props.